Hello everybody, it's me Manny, and today I wanted to make kind of a different video, which is not really that different since I've talked about Lost and console games in the past, but I wanted to give this series a twist, and instead of talking about console games in general, I wanna try to organize it a little bit and talk about console games from a specific franchise or console, which I guess can make the segment more organized. But if you still wish to see my other videos on the subject, then you can check them out in the meantime. Anyway, today I wanna talk about some console Mario games, some of which you may have heard before. I'm not gonna say that every case in this video is gonna be incredibly obscure, like the ones I will usually talk about, but there are still interesting cases, so I do hope you enjoy the video. Return of Donkey Kong was a game planned for the NES, which was going to be one of the many sequels that the original Donkey Kong had for the system, including Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong Jr. Math, and Donkey Kong 3. This game was briefly mentioned in an official Nintendo Player's Guide magazine edition of 1987, in which it is established that we could be able to control Donkey Kong for the first time, and presumably use his barrel throwing mechanic. Other than this though, nothing much else is known about the game. There are no screenshots or footage of any build, and the game got cancelled around 1988 or 1989. This is just a speculation from my part, but I will assume that Return of Donkey Kong will have been something like a 2D side-scrolling platformer, where we will control Donkey Kong in his NES form and throw barrels at enemies as our main mechanic, which will eventually become a thing in Donkey Kong Country for the SNES, but whether or not any of these console titles made it into Country is unknown. Mario Takes America was a game which was going to be released for the Philips CDI in the early 90s, and as the title implies, it would have featured Mario in the United States of America, arriving at New York and having to travel across the country until he gets to Hollywood to star in his own feature film, which I guess he will end up arriving there in 2023 after all. And the particular thing about this game was that it was going to feature full motion realistic backgrounds, of course combined with 2D sprites for Mario and probably obstacles and enemies. And Mario will also have been able to do more stuff than just doing platforming. According to a post made by one of the developers of this game, he will have traveled across New York in a helicopter, the Niagara Falls in a boat, Texas in a train, a neon race in Las Vegas, and even a night car race in Los Angeles. Basically, the gameplay will change depending on the level you were in. Eventually, Philips' contract with Nintendo will end, and they will attempt to contact Sega to replace Mario with Sonic in this game, which will also never happen. In the end, Sega Entertainment, who are developing the game, will create their own character for the game called Metal, which will have a sidekick called Heavy. But sadly, the game was never funded by anyone, and because of this it got cancelled and Sega will end up being bankrupt and closing in 1994. I guess no cancelled Mario games video will be complete without a mention of Super Mario Wacky Worlds. This was the second planned Mario game for the Philips CDI, and unlike Mario Takes America, there's quite a bunch of media available for this game, including sprites, how the levels looked, and even 3 prototype copies in circulation. This game was being developed by Nova Logic, and it was going to be a sequel to Super Mario World, although I don't know why Nintendo would want a sequel for Super Mario World in a non-Nintendo console. It must have been weird times. Anyway, because of the failure of the Philips CDI, the game got cancelled, and it never went past the pre-alpha phase of development. But we still got plenty of stuff to know the direction this game was going to have. This game will have seen Mario travel to various new locations, such as Greece, Egypt, a haunted castle, a swamp, etc. Most of these locations count with screenshots from the pre-alpha build of the game, but other locations, such as the Aztec, house, village, sewer, and chemistry lab, were never finished, and thus don't have screenshots, and we only know about their existence by name. This game contains a lot of unfinished aspects, as it is expected from a pre-alpha build, such as it using placeholder music from Super Mario World instead of original music, and Mario only being able to move left and right and jump, with no power-ups or even the ability to slide. Not even the enemies were programmed correctly, as they would disappear if Mario ended up above them, instead of they actually being defeated. It is worth mentioning, however, and this is gonna sound very surreal, but the development team was composed by only 2 people. Yep, that's right, only 2 people worked on this game for 24 hours a day for 2 weeks. Which is extremely unhealthy if you think about it, but hey, gotta sell Nintendo on the idea of a sequel to one of their most iconic games on a console that isn't even theirs to begin with, in the best way possible, I guess. Big respect for these 2 guys for trying their best though. BB Mario Land, also known as Mario Adventure, is a console game which would have been released for the obscure and commercial failure that was the Virtual Boy. And if you don't know about the Virtual Boy, it was basically the first attempt at a 3D Nintendo console, way before the 3DS, with the main difference being that the players will put their eyes into the visor that the console had, and they will see LEDs with mirror scanning technology that will be in the form of 4 shades of red and a plain black background. Sadly, this console didn't do very well, and the library only had, get ready for this, 3 games. Hey everybody, future Manny here. Turns out I'm an idiot, and I thought there were only 3 games for the Virtual Boy overall, but there's actually 22, and only 3 of them are Mario themed. So, yeah, I fucked up again. What do you want me to say, honestly? Just shit happens sometimes. Back to the video. Mario Clash, Mario Tennis, and Virtual Boy Wario Land, with BB Mario Land being a 4th planned game that was cancelled. This game was going to be a 2D side-scrolling game in the same fashion as other well-known Mario games of that time, and it even featured a minigame inspired by the original Mario Bros. Game that would end up becoming a separate game on its own, the previously mentioned Mario Clash. This game has some images and even a tech demo video available, so we can give ourselves a solid idea about what this game was gonna be like. And although the story isn't known, we can quite judge that Wario was going to be a boss or even the main villain in this game, seeing as how one of the obstacles was a rock with Wario's face on it. Could be just a speculation, but honestly it is pretty believable in my opinion. Either way, after the only tech demo shown during the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in 1995, the game was never seen again and got cancelled for unknown reasons. The Nintendo 64 Diddy was a disk drive unit that would serve as an extension for the N64. It had some exclusive games as well as extensions of already existing games that became cartridges. And because of the commercial failure this product had in Japan, many of the games and extensions planned for it will either be reworked into a cartridge or just cancelled entirely, with some of these games becoming quite different to their N64 Diddy concept. One of the most well-known cases of this is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which was a way more ambitious title back when it was for the N64 DD, with stuff like extra dungeons, an internal clock, and being able to leave marks in the environment, such as leaving footprints in the sand or putting a sign, with those marks staying there permanently. It was a bigger concept but probably too ambitious overall. Either way, Mario had some N64 DD titles that got cancelled or reworked, so I'll go very quickly into this because there's not really a lot of information about them. First, we got some cancelled games from the Mario Artist series, which basically were creative Mario themed games that would let you do stuff like painting, animating, and even creating 3D models, something similar to Mario Paint for the SNES. There were 8 Mario Artist games announced in total, but 4 were cancelled because of the failure of the N64 Diddy. There's not any in-depth information about the cancelled Mario Artist games aside from their titles, although you could easily tell what they were about just by the titles alone. The released games were Paint Studio, Talent Studio, Communication Kit, and Polygon Studio, while the cancelled titles were Game Maker, Graphical Message Maker, Sound Maker, and Video Jockey Maker. I'm especially intrigued about Game Maker because I really wonder what kind of games the player will be able to make there, or even how they will be able to do so. And as you may know, we did get an official Nintendo Game Maker in 2021, in the form of Game Builder Garage for the Nintendo Switch, but I highly doubt this had anything to do with the cancelled Mario Artist Game Maker. Next, we have Super Mario 64 2, and I know everyone knows about this one, so I'll be very brief about it. Basically, there was going to be a sequel to Super Mario 64 that had the working title of Super Mario 64 2, because I can only assume this would have gotten a different name if it was released. In this sequel, which was planned to be released in 1999, there were many new aspects, such as a rideable Yoshi and Luigi being a playable character after being scrapped in the first game. But sadly, due to both lack of progress and the failure of the N64 DD, the sequel was cancelled and presumably many of its elements made it into games such as Mario Sunshine and Mario Galaxy. Next up, we have Super Mario RPG 2, which became Paper Mario, but was originally going to be released in the N64 DD before being changed to a cartridge. According to Shigeru Miyamoto, aka God, they wanted this game graphics to be in the vein of its predecessor, but as we all know, it got the paper mechanics, as well as many other changes done for it to not be just a sequel for the first Mario RPG, but its own title overall. Now, I have never played Paper Mario, so I can't tell a lot about what's different about this early build of the game, but it does seem like stuff was improved for the final product, which is all that matters in the end. And last but not least, we got some titles that we don't really have any info on other than names, which are disc extensions for Mario Party, Mario Party 2, Super Mario 64, and finally the early version of Donkey Kong 64, which went by the names Donkey Kong World, Ultra Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong Universe. So yeah, a bunch of stuff cancelled because of the unfortunate failure of the N64 DD, which I honestly don't quite understand since it seemed like a really cool extension of an already great console, but I guess sometimes it just be like that. Although it didn't have an actual official name, Yoshi Racing was going to be a 3D game in the Yoshi franchise being developed by Argonaut Games, and was apparently going to be released for the N64. Argonaut later reworked the game as their own IP, which will become the iconic PS1 game Croc Legend of the Gobos. There's barely any information about this game, and there aren't any pictures or footage of it, but we do have a single image of a Yoshi model supposedly made by Argonaut for the console game. This model, as well as many other things, was leaked as part of 2020's Nintendo Giga Leak. The story here is that after the success of Star Fox, Argonaut pitched a 3D game starring Yoshi to Nintendo, and they made a prototype for it. But sadly, Nintendo didn't greenlit the project, with one Argonaut employee speculating it was because the company didn't want to let third parties use their characters. It is said that the game would have been very similar to Super Mario 64, but with Yoshi as the main playable character, which leads me to the question, why was it called Yoshi Racing then? I'm gonna go ahead and speculate that it probably involved racing in a running fashion rather than a kart racing one. But honestly, with the little information there is about this title, it's kind of upsetting not knowing which direction this game was going to have. Overall, it's a sad loss, but I'm still glad we got Croc instead. This game was the sequel to Diddy Kong Racing for the N64, and it was going to be released for the GameCube around the mid-2000s. The game was pitched by Climax Group, and funny enough, even though this game was meant to be for the GameCube, the prototype build was made for the Xbox. This was because the tools for this hardware were already developed at the time. Either way, this pitch got rejected, and information about it never went public until an amateur video game activist acquired the prototype and made a video about it in November 2016, with a playable build being leaked in May 2020. The story of this game is that Wispig, after being defeated in the previous game, would ally himself with the Kremlins to get his revenge, and they kidnap members of the Kong clan, so now it's up to Diddy Kong and all the other racers of the original Diddy Kong Racing to stop Wispig once again. And apparently, there were plans to originally have a brand new villain instead of Wispig, a white rhino named Baron Von Short. Diddy Kong Adventure was going to have an adventure mode such as the previous one, and it took place in Congo Island, a hub world with many areas, characters, and secrets. We will have been able to ride animals in this game, as well as planes, jet skis, quad bikes, buggies, and hover scooters. The developers had many ambitious and fresh ideas in mind for this game, such as being able to change your vehicle mid-race, collect items to customize the vehicles and reach new areas, and even special attacks depending on the character you are using. Even plans for the courses were huge, with a pitch document for the game mentioning 16 villages with 3 courses each, which will be 48 tracks in total. So yeah, basically this game was going to be huge, like really huge, but sadly only the demo for the pitch was developed in 2004. But at least we can say it's a playable demo and not a lost one, so for once, it's a good ending for preservation. And to close this list, we have Super Mario Spikers, a game that was being made by Next Level Games, developers of Super Mario Strikers and Mario Strikers Charged. Unlike the previous 2 games, this one wasn't centered in football, but rather in volleyball and wrestling with elements of a game show. This game was being made shortly after the completion of Mario Strikers Charged, and originally it started as just a volleyball game. But as time went on, the dev team decided to implement wrestling elements. When Next Level pitched the idea for Nintendo, they rejected it because of the game's realistic wrestling moves, which were against the Mario franchise standard of wholesome content. It is said the violence was too realistic compared to other games featuring Mario in combat, most notably the Super Smash Bros. Games, and personally I would have loved to see that. Like, just imagine Mario characters beating the crap out of each other while playing volleyball. If that isn't a great concept for a Mario game, then I don't know what is. But yeah, Nintendo didn't like the game and so it got cancelled in 2007. As for media available for this game, we got a bunch of images and concept art, as well as a small animation test that will give us the idea of how the wrestling movements will have been. And I don't really see anything wrong with them. I mean, it's not like they will have broken their bones or made themselves bleed in this game. It's just wrestling moves. But I guess Nintendo was just too scared to take that risk with their franchise. Oh well. And with all of that, we made it to the end of this video. I wanted to go back into the topic of lost and cancelled games for a while, and I gotta say, I learned a lot about cancelled Mario games doing this. Hell, there's even a couple games in here I didn't even know existed until I started writing the script for this. And it's been cool discovering new cancelled games. I might keep doing this with other franchises and even consoles eventually. It's just a really fun topic to discuss, So yeah, that's really it. Thanks a lot for watching, I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye. Hey, thanks a lot for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. This motivates me to continue doing this type of content. Believe me, it does take effort, so support is greatly appreciated. I also stream on my Twitch channel, usually on the weekends, but I will tend to stream after a new video is up as well. so chances are I might be live there right now, so feel free to go and say hi. And finally, don't forget to join my Discord server. We have a small but cool community, and it's also a good place to hang out, so come join us. With that said, thank you and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.